Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast,
a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
All right, everybody, welcome back, and thanks again so much for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast. Now, we wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk a bit about the importance of relationship development in the dog training world. And this is something that Brent and I have been extremely passionate about. You know, it's interesting that Vinnie says that, you know, what you were saying earlier was that you believe that something that's really helped you be as successful as you are is just your ability to treat clients like family, right? And just kind of bring them into that circle, that support group of, this isn't, I mean, it's a business, but it's not just a business. We actually care about you and we want you to continue to grow and succeed and do it with us, right? And so I wanted to hear a bit more about that. And I know that, you know, Brent had some stuff that he wanted to touch on as well. So yeah, can we talk a bit more about that?
Dude, I was going to say 100%, but absolutely. Absolutely. You can talk
You still said 100%.
I know. I was almost there and I blew it. We'll edit that out. Great. Absolutely. We'll talk. But I think you have to be honest, but you also have to be extremely respectful of the fact that, you know, especially for me, I'm going into their home. They invited me to their home to work with their dog, but I'm not there to sugarcoat things. So I have to get my point across as confidently, but not being a dick as possible. People appreciate honesty, right? So if I go into a house and we're sitting down, instead of me going, hey, your dog's really fat and it's unhealthy, you know, you have to explain it to the way that you would expect someone to explain something to you that's really of high value and of high importance. Mm-hmm. God bless you, Mariano.
Thank you.
Yeah, very welcome. So I think if you can sit down and, like, one thing that we do with our training program is when we first come into the house, we sit down and we have a conversation with the owner. But before we even get to that point, when we set up an initial session with one of our trainers, right? So we have 7 trainers. When you set up an initial session, you actually get a video sent to you of our trainer explaining how it works. Mm-hmm. And the people feel like they know them, right? They're like, oh, I know Michelle coming in, or I know Anthony coming into my house now. So then we go sit down at the table and like, oh, this seems here because I've just watched Anthony explain some stuff. And they sit down and they build a relationship with this person before we even do anything with this dog. Let me talk to you. You tell me what you think the actual issue is, and I'm going to tell you what's really going on. And if you can develop that little bit of connection, there's a better chance of follow through from the owner, which I think is everything. So instead of just going in, oh, okay, grab a leash, whoosh, take this dog, let's go heal him right now. You know, let's sit down, let's take our time, let's communicate, and then we move on from there. But I also think this is a variable that you either, I think, have it or you don't have it. I don't think this is something that can be taught or trained. You have to be really good at reading the body language of a human being, right? Of what they're comfortable and not uncomfortable with, what your energy level can be with, when you can swear, when you can't swear, and so on and so forth. So if you can connect with that human while you're in that room for 2 hours or whatever it ends up being, it makes it a lot easier for them to trust you, to follow you, and then to continually following you. So I think that's something that that you have to do. You know,
a fascinating point that comes to my mind is when we talked to Shawn OShea. He was always a big influence for me because of his work with e-collar back when I was learning how to do e-collar stuff like 6-7 years ago. But also, honestly, my favorite part about the Good Dog videos were their imperfections. Like, they were the opposite of Zach George. The editing and all that stuff wasn't great, but the content was like amazing, right? And Shawn himself just has a very personable attitude. And what I noticed, something that he would explain a lot, him and Jeff Gelman, were, not everybody's going to be, because he's not particularly like an ostentatious. It's not like he curses much or anything like that. So it's not that he would lose a potential client like that. It's more just some people don't subscribe to e-collar work or corrections at all, or that sort of thing. So he made I want to say it was, he has different forms of video. And one was like Shawn's rants. And I think it was a rant that he talked about. You have to be willing to show your true self out there online because it kind of pre-vets potential clients for you. And he was like, people who hire Shawn OShea know what they're getting. They already like know what it is. So I don't have to sit here and like explain or defend my technique or whatever. I can just get to business with people who kind of already feel like they know me. And I thought that was fascinating. And even if someone doesn't know him, he does have a very personable quality to him. But I thought that was an interesting point. It was like, he kind of made it okay, I think, for a lot of trainers a few years ago who were doing e-collar, because e-collar kind of really picked up steam like 5, 6, 7 years ago, it seems like. Quick, right? I think he's part of that reason, because the good dog grew fast with it, right? But I think that he was one of the people that made it okay to be like, you know what? You don't have to please everybody. If somebody doesn't want to do e-collar, call this guy down the road, but if you want the good dog, then you get the good dog. And there's nothing wrong with catering to your audience, because then you have a more dialed in product, and I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. What I appreciate about him and his page and his program is that he just he once again puts it out there what he does.
Right.
Right. It's not like, and I respect that a lot. It's not a sales gimmick. This is what I do.
Right.
And this comes back to the benefits of social media, where you can actually develop a relationship with somebody without even seeing them.
Right.
So now these people feel like they already know me. They feel like they already know my employees, because they have their own social medias as well. And they have their own videos as well. So it feels really homey, right? And I feel really connected with these people. But you gotta respect people who put their work out there, and for better or for worse. And I like the thing that you just said, Mariano, about I love that he puts videos out, but that they're him holding his phone and because I'm not a great videographer or anything like that. I'm good enough to get by, but I'm not putting shit out there to make it look fucking cute. I'm putting shit out there because this is what I do and this is my process. And I hope you can pick up. And if that's all you take from it, phenomenal. The thing that bothers me though is that all right, so you see a guy like Shawn, and you are right? So it's like, you either love this stuff, you like this stuff, or that's definitely not for me. The problem is that there's trainers out there who look at that, and what they don't understand is there's so many things you can still learn from someone that you may disagree with. Right. Which is, once again, I'm such a fucking hypocrite, but because we're about the purely positive trainers, which ones do I follow? And I follow two. Right. But the two that I do follow, I learn a lot from. So that's just insight for me now that I'm saying this verbally to people who are going to hold me accountable. Hey, dickhead, maybe you should start following other people as well, because there is something, you can always learn something from somebody. Fucking went on a tangent again, but this is all back to the relationship portion.
100%.
Yeah. Now we're 100%. You geek. So you were talking about developing a relationship
in 14 years. Sorry, go ahead.
You geek.
You geek.
You big brat, or what is it? Booger? What? No, never mind. Whatever. That's weird. Sorry. I called you a booger.
Go ahead.
I was saying, what did people say back then? All right. So you're talking about, relationships development with clients, and kind of how it kind of turned into how we use social media to kind of create relationship, or at least that first layer of entry. Right. And I want to talk a little bit more about clients' relationships with dogs, right? Because this is something that it's really interesting, because I actually had to ask my group class the other day. I said, guys, it's been a long time since I haven't been a dog trainer. So it's hard for me to think not as a dog trainer. And I said, what was the hardest part of this group class? Right. And some of them said, dog training's hard. And I'm like, what part of it was hard? They're like, you got to put the work in. Right. And then you got to be consistent. And there are some people, there was a class where I had 10 people and it whittled down to 6 because 4 people just didn't want to put the work in. Didn't want to put the work in, right? And that's okay. That's cool with me, right? And they weren't people who found me organically. It was like a hotel event, or not a hotel, an apartment event that they put together, and people said, there's a group class to sign up for. And we had some fall off because these people didn't know what they were signing up for, right? And so they go, but we really, really learned the communication. We learned, and then boom, this keyword, relationship. We didn't know that we could have a relationship with our dog where they understood. We knew that they would that they could understand us. You know what I mean? Versus just what's it called? Anthropomorphizing or assuming how they're feeling. We can actually tell and read now, right? And so I thought that was really powerful. What are some big points that stick out to you when thinking about relationship with dogs and their humans?
So, yeah, and I'm going to touch point on 2 things that you were saying. One is, it is so important not just to teach owners on how to handle their dog, but how to live with their dog. Right? Because it's not, like you can teach your dog to heel and sit, but if you're still living with your dog inappropriately, our habits are creating their behavior. So we got to make sure that, you know, we go into their house and we say, listen, that is the one benefit is because they may tell you something, right? And they tell me straight to my face, they don't do something. And then you literally watch them do it. And you're like, dude, you know, your dog is nudging you and you're petting him right now. Exactly. You're like, we don't give in to, he's nudging and pawing you and you're petting him right now. Right. So, you know, I think that is the hardest thing for people is, listen, I do have to adjust the way that I want to live with my dog at times in order to get to what I want, right? And if you don't want to get that, that's fine. It doesn't matter. You can live the way that you're living and it's, you know, you're perfectly fine to do so. But if you want to see success and you want to get the dog to, and we talked before about human guilt being a very powerful tool, right? So I like to add this in there, like, listen, you're not letting your dog reach their maximum potential because you're being a little selfish right now. Right. And I need you to understand that. And that's a big fucking blow, right? You got to make sure that you have this person's trust when you say that. Right. Because if you say that too soon, they get defensive, they get off put. Yeah. But if you say that at the right time, they go, oh, and they feel bad. Right. And then when they feel bad, now they're like, what do I need to do, Vinny? You know, what do I need to do? Yeah. And then from there, we need to say, okay, well, you know, tell me about your daily life. Tell me about what you do with your dog during a daily basis. And you guys see it. I mean, every dog is under exercised. They don't, they have no tasks, right? Even if they are exercised, they have no task. There's nothing to achieve. So therefore they have no purpose. When you give a dog a purpose and you start to give a dog a task, you guys can complete that task together. When you complete it together, your dog starts to look at you more frequently. When they start to look at you more frequently, now you guys are connecting a little bit more. It's not just like, I tell you to do this. The dog is, tell me what to do versus me just being like this dictator always on this. So that's the way that I would look at it.
So something fascinating that you touched on just then was something that we talked about with Larry Cronin with Jonas Black. And Jonas made a point when he was talking to us about, like, with me, like, you kind of get what you get, you know, in a really fun way, you know, because he does well with his clients, about like, I'm this tatted dude that rolls up in a fucking Harley and, you know, I'm cursing and whatever. And, you know, and he's like, but that's just my way of breaking the ice. But he knows how to play that game. Right. And what fascinated me was all of you guys brought up this understanding. You have to be sometimes brutally honest with your client. I mean, that's what you're there for. That's why they pay you money, right? That's why you're the professional and they're not. But the relationship has to be able to bear it, right? So you like establish that first, and then you get comfortable kind of digging into them after the fact, right? So I guess talk to me a little bit about, so like for a newer dog trainer, because like Brent was saying, it's been a long time since any of us have been new, right? For a newer dog trainer, can you explain to us a little bit about how you know when it's okay to keep it real with the client a little bit, or if you're not there yet, how do you know when it's time to push to get to that point?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question, dude. Especially right on the spot. Then he's got to think of an answer really quick. So I think there's two huge variables. One is the dog, and one is the person. At some point, there's going to be a dog where you actually don't have the time, and you're like, hey, listen, you called me because this dog has gone through 4 training programs, or maybe this dog has bitten 4 people. We need to make some serious changes in this dog's life. So if it's at an extreme, a lot of times they're calling you because right now they hate their dog and they hate living with their dog. And that is the worst thing to hear from a client's perspective, is they go, cause I asked this question to my clients, and some of them laugh, cause I'm like, do you like your dog? Right? Really natural conversation. Do you like your dog? Like, yeah. What do you mean? And some people will fucking tear up right there. Right. And they will go, no, I don't right now. Right. And it's like, I'm like, well, that's a huge thing when someone says that. And, you got to be like, hey, listen, well, that's why we're here. We're here to help you develop a better relationship. But in order to get to that point. So I think you got to find some common ground somewhere. And realistically, you got to be really good at reading the room. Right. But that is, we talked about that earlier in today's show. That's a talent, right? You got to have that. So I don't know if there's a right answer for when do I know I feel comfortable. I guess it's just a gut feeling. And some dogs, you just be like, hey, listen, this is how it's got to be. I've got no time to waste. You need all the help you can possibly get. And therefore,
urgency
this is
behind it.
Exactly.
Can I rephrase the question a little bit?
Yeah, 100%.
If you were to give some advice to a newer trainer who, like we talked about before, because they don't necessarily have that comfort level conversing, just having a conversation person to person with a client, they're almost like script reading. Like what Brent and I talked about in the last episode was like listening to a brand new trainer talk about a program. It's like listening to a high schooler give a speech. It sounds like you really don't want to be doing this. It sounds like you're just kind of talking out the words until you're done and then you want to sit down. But how would you offer a newer trainer advice on like, do this thing, or think about it this way, in order to make them more comfortable and more fluid? Because a lot of times they know the content. Like, a newer trainer, if they're good enough to be doing in-homes, even if you're there watching them, if they're doing it, like if they're the one kind of running the show, they're good enough at that point to know what the problem is. But are they comfortable enough to call out the owner?
Yeah. And I might be misreading your question. So just stop me if I am.
Okay.
You talked about how the trainer goes through a script, right? Because we all have that like internal script of shit that we need to say.
Right.
What you need to do is you need to find whether you do it to your trainers or you can get somebody to do it to you. And we do this all the time where my trainer's talking about something to whether it's a client or a fake client. So we'll set up a fake client or we'll do it with family, so on and so forth. And while they're going through something, interrupt them. Right. So, whoa. Explain that again. Or why did you? Okay, because now their internal clock is fucked. Right. So now they have to figure out how to get back to explaining something, even though, exactly. Because but you have to get to that point. And my trainers, and this is a love-hate thing, right? So my trainers, at some points they sound like me, right? So they've been with you for how long? So when they talk, I'm like, Jesus, this person sounds like me. So, you have to have the ability to pivot. Right. Or sometimes I'll go through the program and I'll have my trainer go through and explain it, hey, that's perfect on this dog. That doesn't need touched. But now what are you going to do? Right. Or, hey, I don't want this done. So now what are you going to do? So I think you just have to like literally set up mock sessions where these people are set up for failure, or explain it to your best friend who knows nothing about dogs and tell them to ask you every question possible. Because if you feel comfortable explaining it to your best friend, they're not going to be like, excuse me, I'm
get the fuck out of my house. Right.
Exactly. Yep. But what they will do? They'll fucking push your buttons. Right. And then you get pissed. And now you have to learn how to deal with a certain scenario. So I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but if
that's excellent advice. And that's definitely something that I would agree with you that newer trainers should do and have like more, friends or more experienced trainers or whatever kind of walk them through, because I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because you throw off that internal clock, because there is like a sequence to, I'm going to talk from this point to that point to this point. But also I think what newer trainers need to account for is it's a different dynamic when you walk into someone's home. A lot of new trainers aren't ready for that the first time they do in-homes, right? Is like, I'm coming into your house essentially and like telling you what to do. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. So it's fascinating, because not only does cutting them off make them think twice about what the program was, where they are, and kind of like assess themselves, but it also gets them comfortable. Like sometimes you're in the groove and like you're building momentum. Like you were talking about, you kind of feel good. Like, all right, I'm hitting like a stride here. And then that momentum gets cut. You have to be comfortable picking it right back up and get back on it, And so, that's an excellent point.